Welcome to Hull and Estates and Succession Planning, a series of podcasts hosted by Ian Hull and Susanna Popvic-Montag. The podcast you are listening to will provide information and insights into estate planning in Canada. From the offices of Hull in Toronto, here are Ian and Susanna.
Hi, and welcome to Hull and Estates and Succession Planning. You're listening to and possibly watching our podcast on Tuesday, September 8th, 2009. All right, well, today we have the pleasure of torturing you for another podcast.
If this was torture, I'm okay.
We miss Susanna, but we are thoroughly enjoying our mini-series with our BNN expert, Jordan Atin. All right, we were finishing up with a thought on valuations, and I thought we should close the loop a little bit on that. And we ended our last podcast talking about your suggestions about using business models and imposing that on personal assets, because it helps to sort of take the wind out of the sail of the emotions. And like you said, you taught when you do a will, you're telling your children how you'd like to solve the problem, and you acknowledge that it's hard to pinpoint a value of something that really matters a lot to them, and that's possibly a cottage or maybe a small family business or a large family business. So we're struggling with this whole question of valuation, and how do we pinpoint the value of a particular asset that isn't a fixed value asset. So if you don't mind, if we could just continue that discussion for today's podcast to wind this thought up.
Sure. Well, the first thing I think about an appraisal, that in itself is a business decision. They are not going to take, evaluator is not going to take into account the emotional, psychological connection that one person has, what it means sentimentally to a person. It's purely a financial arrangement. I think that is a good signal to send to your kids. At the end of the day, the wills that we draft are business documents, right? I mean, it's about money, and so yes, there's a lot of emotion involved, but at the end of the day, all we really have to give away is the money, or the money's worth, the cottage or the asset. And so, making it more of a business structure and setting that up so that no one kid says, look, we should be doing this like family members, not like business partners. But if it's designated in the will that this is how it's to be done, then that takes some of that feeling away. It says, okay, this is how we have to do it. It is a business decision. We're going to deal with it that way. And however it works out, it's going to be a business deal. And that's not the romantic way of doing it, certainly among family members, but I think it's the most realistic way.
And it really comes down to, I think, as you say, I mean, you either put risk on the plan by letting it just fly and see what happens, or control that risk by setting up parameters. And some people choose to say, all my estate equally between my children, divide it, and we don't particularize any way, shape, or form how we're going to do it. But if you do know that you've got a special asset, or you've got special dynamics in the family, which, let's be honest, most families do, and you can anticipate problems, it seems to me that overlaying a process is very important to do.
Yeah, I mean, it can be read two ways by the kids. One, it could be read positively, that by imposing some rules, you aren't leaving it to be a free-for-all and creating bad feelings. On the other hand, kids can view that as mom or dad is trying to tell us what to do again, and we can certainly work it out. We're older now, we're mature now, we can deal with it ourselves. Why do you have to tell us how to do it? So,
I always think is a great way to deflect that, and that's exactly the tension. Right? Trust the kids, let them figure it out, or tell them how to figure it out even when you're dead.
Right.
And what I find remarkable is that parents don't, even at the very early level, don't ask their kids how they want to do it.
Yes.
Like, just say, do you want me to tell you how to do it? Because if you're going to keep fighting, I'm going to tell you how to do it. And if you don't, and you want to just trust it, God bless you. You do it, and you figure it out yourselves. But nobody wants to have that,
most basic
dialogue about your estate administration.
And this is where really, as estate lawyers, you got to take real stock of how the family works, because I mean, leaving it, if you got 3 kids, 2 of which use, or one of whom uses the cottage, 2 don't, and you know there's going to be a fight or two on it or whatever, you got to know that before you recommend either the free-for-all or the imposing of a situation. And personally, I would say before imposing something, talk to the kids about it. Like, here's how I'm thinking about dealing with it. What's your reaction?
And I just see so little downside, because if the reaction is mixed, then you've answered your own question. Right? You better impose, or else you're going to have a free-for-all.
But what you see is that kids say, "Oh, I don't want to hear it. Don't talk. I don't want to hear that you're going to die." Or I don't want to seem greedy, so I don't want to get involved in it. Whatever you leave me is a blessing. Right. It's less than a blessing if it turns into a fight.
That's right. And sometimes it comes with the curse of leadership, and you have to, if you are the head or the heads of the family, you have to step up to the plate, regardless of what consequences it's going to arise during your lifetime.
And sometimes you can have the best of both worlds. In other words, you give the kids, let's take a cottage for example, you give the kids a certain period of time to work it out between themselves, with the idea that if they don't work it out by the state, X is going to happen. We're going to get certified appraisers. We're going to go this, that. Or it's going to get sold or something. And that at least says, I trust you, but I want to help you too. If you can't work it out among yourselves, then we've got a fallback position.
That's a really good idea. Giving them that sort of cooling off period. You guys can work it out, great. But if you can't, there's a system that's going to kick into place. And that's whether you like it or not. And that's the beauty of a will, because a will means something. It's a document, it's a contract, and a court will say that typically you have to follow the rules of the will. And if one of the rules is take a breather and give it a year to figure out what you're going to do with the cottage, but if you haven't figured out by then, this is what's going to happen, the appraisers start to get set in and all of that, there's that tension of extra costs and so on, and embarrassment that maybe as a family, why you couldn't even solve the problem amongst yourselves, all of that.
For sure.
So it's a great suggestion. All right, well, I think as we started off this mini series on valuations, we wanted to stay clear of pretending that we were in any way, shape, or form business valuators. We should in the future maybe look into getting some more podcasts on that vein, and maybe bring in a special guest who can give us the neat sort of nuggets on that. But what I'm pleased and I appreciate you coming and doing with us today was talking about this whole idea of how the valuation process in of itself is an important part of A, your estate planning, and B, the administration after you die. And giving us some tools to help avoid some of the bumpy roads that could get created on that. So again, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
And I remind everyone that September 24th is our upcoming Hull and Hull breakfast series. We have 3 speakers. Myself, Susanna Popvic-Montag, and Megan Conley will be speaking about general issues relating to estates. Welcome you to come to it, or feel free to apply to view it on the webinar format. So thanks again, Jordan.
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Bye.
You have been listening to Hull and Estates and Succession Planning by Ian Hull and Susanna Popvic-Montag. The podcast that you've been listening to has been provided as an information service. It is a summary of current issues in estates and estate planning. It is not legal advice, and you're reminded to always speak with a legal professional regarding your specific circumstance. To listen to other Hull and Hull podcasts or leave any questions or comments, please visit our website at hullestatemediation.com.